Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're zooming way in to dive into the microscopic hardware and the massive global impact of the planet's absolute most fascinating creatures. Seriously, if you've ever looked down at the ground and wondered how that tiny, bustling ecosystem beneath your feet actually operates, you are in the exact right place. We're going to look closely at the incredible biology that makes these creatures tick. So let's kick things off with a quick question for you. What makes up the largest group of animals on Earth? Well, you might be surprised to learn that the answer isn't mammals, it's not fish, and it definitely isn't birds. The largest group of animals on Earth by a massive margin is insects. They completely surround us, basically operating the hidden machinery of the natural world, often right under our noses. Here is our roadmap for today's micro to macro journey. We'll be hitting, number 1, what makes an insect? 2, the magic of metamorphosis. 3, superorganisms. 4, helpful heroes and harmful pests. And finally, number 5, crawlers, the garden imposters. Let's get right into it.
Section 1. What makes an insect? We are going to examine the literal, alien-like hardware of the insect world.
To ground our exploration today in real science, we've got to talk about entomology. That is the official scientific study of insects. It's an entire field dedicated to understanding creatures that, frankly, look like they belong on a totally different planet. Okay, so every single adult insect shares a highly successful biological blueprint. First up, they have exactly 3 distinct body parts: the head, the thorax, and the abdomen. Attached to that middle section, the thorax, are exactly 6 jointed legs. And unlike us, they have 0 internal bones. I mean, imagine literally wearing your skeleton on the outside of your body, because that's exactly what their exoskeleton is. Add in their highly specialized sensory gear on the head, like compound eyes, complex mouth parts, and a pair of antennae to intimately feel out their surroundings, and you've got a perfectly engineered biological machine. And here's where it gets even cooler. They don't have lungs. Instead of inhaling through a mouth like we do, they actually breathe through a network of tiny air holes called spiracles. These are located directly on the sides of their thorax and abdomen, so they literally absorb the air they need right through their body armor. Wild, right? Moving right along to Section 2, the magic of metamorphosis, or how insects actually grow and transform.
So, every insect starts out by laying eggs, but what happens next is kind of a choose-your-own-adventure. Path number 1 is what scientists call complete metamorphosis. This is a staggering 4-stage total transformation. It starts with the egg, which hatches into a larva. Think of a caterpillar. Now, the larva's main job is just to eat and grow as much as possible. Then it enters the pupa stage, usually encasing itself in a chrysalis. Inside that little casing, its entire body basically dissolves and completely rebuilds itself from scratch, finally emerging as a fully formed adult. This dramatic 4-step cycle is the path taken by bugs like butterflies, silkworms, moths, honeybees, ants, and beetles. Alternatively, you've got the streamlined 3-stage cycle, incomplete metamorphosis. This is a much more direct route. The insect hatches from its egg not as a grub or a caterpillar, but as a nymph. And a nymph essentially looks just like a miniature version of the adult, just without any wings. It simply molts and matures over time directly into its final adult form. You'll see this streamlined development in insects like cockroaches, grasshoppers, and lice. All right, Section 3. Superorganisms, complex insect societies, and the absolute power of teamwork. You know, some of these insects don't just live solitary lives. They permanently live in massive, highly organized colonies, and they operate with such a strict division of labor that the entire colony functions almost like a single superorganism. If we look at a side-by-side comparison of ants and honeybees, it's a masterclass in teamwork. Both rely on a single queen, whose sole job is laying eggs to sustain the population. Both rely on a massive army of workers. These are the ones out there building and cleaning the nests, collecting food or nectar, and caring for the young. But then we have the specialized castes. Ant colonies often produce soldiers, which are heavily armored variants specifically designed to guard the nest. Honeybees, on the other hand, produce drones, whose highly specific role is just to help in reproduction. Every single individual has a specific job and they execute it flawlessly for the survival of the whole shebang. But think about it. How do you actually coordinate a city of tens of thousands of individuals? Well, they need excellent communication, and honeybees solve this brilliantly.
When a worker bee finds a great patch of flowers, she heads back to the hive and performs what's called the waggle dance. It is literally a complex mathematical language that tells the rest of the hive the exact distance and the exact direction of that food source. It's honestly one of the most sophisticated communication systems in the entire animal kingdom. Which brings us to Section 4, Helpful Heroes and Harmful Pests, and how insects actually impact human life. So, our relationship with insects is absolutely a double-edged sword. On one hand, we've got our useful heroes. Honeybees are incredibly valuable for producing honey and beeswax, and critically for facilitating plant pollination, which helps all our crops grow. We even rear them in apiaries, which is a practice called apiculture. Ants are actually super useful too. They tunnel through soil to keep it aerated, and they even prey on nasty pests like bedbugs. Then there are ladybirds, or ladybugs, which act as garden protectors, eating the insects that damage our plants. But, on the other hand, harmful pests can be absolutely devastating. Mosquitoes are responsible for spreading deadly diseases like malaria and dengue fever. And locusts, there is literally no way to overstate this. They can swarm in massive, sky-darkening numbers to completely destroy agricultural crop fields in just a matter of hours.
Interestingly enough, some insects walk a very fine line between useful and harmful, depending entirely on where they happen to be. Take termites, for example. Out in nature, they are the ultimate recyclers. They break down dead trees and return all those great nutrients to the soil. But if those exact same termites find their way into our neighborhoods, well, they become devastating pests that will gladly chew right through and destroy the wooden property of our homes. We also really need to be keenly aware of the severe health impacts some of these pests have on our daily lives. Common houseflies and cockroaches aren't just gross or annoying, they are actually dangerous. They contaminate our food and our cooking utensils, spreading severe diseases like cholera, typhoid, and dysentery. Meanwhile, parasites like bedbugs feed on human blood, causing severe skin rashes, and lice infest human scalps, causing incredibly painful infections. The stakes with these tiny creatures are surprisingly high. Now, you might be pausing right now, thinking about your own backyard. You might be wondering, wait a minute, what about earthworms, or snakes, or lizards? Where do they fit into all this? Well, that perfectly sets up Section 5, Crawlers, the Garden Imposters. We're looking at the non-insects living in the soil. So here is a massive biological plot twist for you. It turns out a lot of those creepy crawlies you see wriggling around in the dirt aren't actually insects at all. They are officially classified as crawlers. And to be a crawler means you completely lack that alien-like insect hardware we discussed back in Section 1. Crawlers do not have exoskeletons, they do not breathe through spiracles, and they certainly do not have a 3-part body with 6 jointed legs. So, let's look at the crawler lineup. First up, earthworms. They've got wet, slimy bodies with absolutely 0 bones or legs. By feeding on organic matter, they massively increase soil fertility, which is exactly why they are often called the friends of the farmer. Next, we have snakes. They have scale-covered bodies and, again, 0 limbs, moving quickly just by slithering and pushing against the ground. They are huge allies to farmers because they eat the rats and pests that destroy crops. Finally, lizards. These are your standard 4-legged, tailed carnivores that help control the populations of the very household pests we mentioned earlier, like cockroaches, flies, and mosquitoes. They live in the exact same garden ecosystem, but their biological blueprints are worlds apart from insects. So when you take a step back and think about the incredible hardware of the exoskeleton, those complex superorganism societies communicating through dance, and the massive ecological impact of both the insects and the crawlers that we've covered in this explainer, it really leaves us with one provocative thought. What would our world look like if this hidden microsociety suddenly vanished? Could humanity even survive without these tiny creatures running the machinery of our planet? It's definitely something to think about the next time you see a tiny creature crossing your path. Thank you so much for joining me on this deep dive into the miniature world that holds up our massive one. Keep learning and always keep looking closely.